Nirvana is one of the most well-known rock bands who popularized the grunge genre in the 80s and influenced much of modern rock music today. And Sony is one of the largest electronic companies who also have their foot in the door of the video game, music, and movie industry. So what does Sony and Nirvana have to do with one another? Well, today we'll be taking a closer look at the two specimens, the Nirvana Nevermind album cover and the Sony PSP graffiti advertisements. By looking at their semiotics and design principles, we'll be able to explore the deeper meaning behind these two specimens and see what visual techniques are used to create such a memorable image. By taking a closer look into the world of art and advertisement, we'll be able to explore these two specimens and how they compare and contrast to one another. So starting with a little history on the conception of these two specimens. Starting with the Nirvana Nevermind album cover, the lead guitarist of Nirvana, Kurt Cobain, was fascinated with natural childbirth. So he approached the designer Robert Fisher to see if he could do anything with that, and he realized that there wasn't very good pictures of natural childbirth, and if there were ones, they were way too graphic to put on an album cover. So they landed on the idea of a baby swimming underwater. And once they got the photo, they realized that they needed something else, so they decided on a fishing line. What to put on that, they didn't know, so they explored with different ideas like a burrito, or a CD, or a piece of raw meat. And it wasn't until someone brought up the idea of a dollar bill on the fishing line that that idea really stuck. And so that's how they landed with this final image. So taking a look at the Sony PSP graffiti advertisements, this happened in 2004-2005 when Nintendo and Sony were really battling it out to be the hot product of the video game industry. So Nintendo with their DS and Sony with their PSP. And Sony wanted to do something disruptive to the video game industry, and that's how they landed on the PSP, and their advertisement reflected that with the graffiti ads. People were not very happy with this graffiti advertisement because it was intruding on people's space in major cities, and then graffiti artists weren't happy that this big company was coming in and using their art medium as a way to advertise their product. Nirvana and Sony were able to get their message across through the use of semiotics and the principles of design. So for the Nevermind album cover, the money is a symbol of capitalism and wealth, and put together with the baby, it's a statement of being anti-capitalist and how society is so obsessed with material wealth. And then for the PSP graffiti advertisement, graffiti can be seen as a meta symbol of art and rebellion to some, and to others it can be seen as intrusive and disruptive. And then looking at how the PSPs are used in these ads, it's a symbol of playfulness and fun for these cartoon characters. Looking at these two specimens, what makes them stand out so much is that they're both declarative statements, playing on people's logic, intellect, and desire. So for the Sony PSP graffiti advertisements, it plays on people's logical appeal to bandwagon, because in these advertisements, it's a group of cartoon characters playing with the PSP and having fun, so people have that desire to also want that feeling. And then for the Nirvana Nevermind album cover, it plays on their intellectual appeal because there is an underlying metaphor of anti-capitalism and how society is so obsessed with material wealth. Now, looking at how the principles of designs were used in these two specimens, starting with the Nirvana Nevermind album cover, we can see that the baby is surrounded by a void of water, creating that negative space, which draws the viewer's eyes towards the baby. As you can see in the before and after, this was done very intentionally. And this also allows for the viewer to follow that leading line from the baby to the money, creating a sense of motion and movement, and that allows for depth to be created as well. Also, the typeface used for the Nirvana Nevermind text in the corner is simple and it doesn't distract from the rest of the album cover. Moving on to the Sony PSP graffiti advertisements, the line weights differentiate from character to the PSP to emphasize the difference, And then also there's no type used on this ad to draw more emphasis to the PSP. From city to city, we are able to see that the characters are done very uniform and only in black and white graffiti to truly create a sense of unity. We're also able to see that the proportions from the characters are very exaggerated, with the large head and big eyes to make it more enticing and seem more playful. To recap, in the world of art and advertisement, there is a consistent pressure for businesses and individuals alike to differentiate themselves from one another. Where there are many ways to achieve this goal, there are certain principles and semiotics that need to be followed in order to make it more appealing to the public. By looking at our two specimens today, we're able to see the use of the principles line and proportion to create a more enticing composition. Where they have a similar approach in how they use these principles, they have a different approach in how they get their message across. One having a more intellectual appeal and the other having more bandwagon appeal. With that being said, they both use symbols in order to convey a deeper message than what is initially presented. So thanks for diving into the world of art and advertisement with me through the lens of the Nirvana Nevermind album cover and the Sony PSP graffiti advertisement. See you next time.